We've been speaking all morning on the programme about Lyme disease. This is after one of Britain's wealthiest men told this programme that he is happy to pledge a significant amount of money to help start a government-backed programme of research into the disease. John Caudwell made his fortune when he co-founded the Phones for You chain. But he, along with his ex-wife and 3 of his children, were all diagnosed with Lyme disease back in 2015. And John told me he is willing to donate $1 million plus.
I'm prepared to put a substantial amount to make it happen. That will be a negotiation. I'm only doing this with my own money because the government just won't do it with theirs.
So when we say substantial, not necessarily specifics, are we talking 6 figures, 7 figures?
Well, to make an impact on society and to not solve this problem, even to start to solve this problem, is going to cost many, many millions of pounds. And so I'm certainly willing to donate $1 million plus. Absolutely willing to do that. But that's a negotiation. I don't want to weaken my negotiation because the government are responsible for this. The NHS are responsible for it. I've already paid $250 million in taxes in the last few years. I don't feel I should have to do this. But the simple fact is, because of their neglect, because of government neglect and NHS, Department of Health neglect of these patients, I find myself in a situation where I have no option but to spend my money to try and make this happen.
Is your money conditional on the government spending money? If they come back and say, look, we're not going to put any more into this, does that mean your donation goes away as well?
Yes, it absolutely does, because I have to have their full backing in this. They have to buy into this because we need the power of the NHS. And if you look at what I've already said about appointing the GPs, that's a crucial part of this process to build up this empirical database. So the government have to take responsibility for the people's lives of Britain. And I will act as a catalyst to try and make that happen by lobbying for them to do it, but also putting my own cash in.
He said he was prepared to go up to several million. It was all about this negotiation with the government. Well, Emma Dolan heard that interview that I did with John, got in touch. She suffers with Lyme disease. Hello, Emma.
Hi, Anna.
Hi. I was really struck by your messages. There was one in particular. You sent a picture of yourself and it just said "left to die."
It sounds quite dramatic, but unfortunately, that's exactly how I felt. And I have to say, if I hadn't have heard John in 2015 talking about his son and talking about Lyme disease, I probably wouldn't be here now.
How did it start for you?
I have been sick for quite some time, just kind of managed the symptoms and not feeling that great. I started with heart arrhythmias, thyroid problems, all sorts of autoimmune problems, and constantly picking up infections. But then in 2014, I'd just come back from a trip from Australia. Everything was going great. Life was to a degree absolutely fine, and it was perfect. And then I got a really bad virus after several bites that I'd had. And I went to bed and never got up, basically. I've been bedbound for 4 years now.
And how did it come to pass that you found out it was Lyme disease? Because you'd been misdiagnosed as well.
I had, interestingly, when I first got sick, I was taken into hospital with severe neurological problems, unable to stand up, very sensory issues. I'd lost a huge amount of weight and I was very unwell, and great that the doctors instantly picked up and said, we need to test you for Lyme disease, which they did. Unfortunately, they decided that the test was a false positive and that I didn't have Lyme disease. And then they stuck me into the ME category and said, unfortunately, you are just one of the 25% of ME sufferers who is severe, and you're bedbound. There isn't anything we can do for you. All we can do is manage your symptoms, and that was it. Basically, I was left to go to bed and stay there.
So you must have pushed then to get that diagnosis changed. Why did you know that it wasn't that it was something different?
I got a phone call from my sister who said, you need to put the telly on. there's a guy called John Caudwell on this morning talking about Lyme disease and talking about his son and his family and himself. Everything he's saying sounds very much like the way you were before you got very sick. And I'd said to my sister, no, I've been tested for Lyme disease and it came back negative, so I don't have it. And she said, switch it on, Emma. He's talking about how the tests are not particularly that they're not accurate. And as soon as I listened to him, I thought, right, okay, let's dig a bit deeper. Let's take control here. And I sent my blood off to Germany. The same lab that John had used, and we got the blood back to say that I tested positive for Borrelia for Lyme disease, as well as multiple co-infections, which was, indicative of people with Lyme disease who have other infections as well. And one of the glaring issues that I had was that my immune system was so suppressed that when I took the evidence back to my doctors, they actually immediately referred me on and said, we need to push this and test further. We don't think you have Lyme disease, but there is something going on. There's something there that's not right.
Just looking at the text, and we've had so many people whose stories mirror yours, Emma, who've had these experiences. They've struggled to get diagnosis. They've struggled to get treatment. There's one or two texts saying, how much do we know about it? Because John Caudwell admits we know very little, and that's why the research is needed. Are we sure it's always Lyme disease? Do we know that that's not an explanation for a different set of symptoms?
Well, obviously from where we stand right now, we need the research and the clinical trials to understand that, to understand the complexities of Lyme disease. I am a big believer in that. The Lyme disease is like John says, the big imitator, and very much can cause and mimic symptoms of other things. And we just won't know to what extent that is until we invest in clinical trials and research. And we must, at this point, acknowledge that where I am now, I've been backwards and forwards to America by ship because I can't fly, just to get help. I've spent upwards of £50,000. I've had chest lines in for antibiotic treatment, and I am significantly better than what I was when I first got sick. But the damage is so significant as well that I am now costing the NHS and social services and, just in general, thousands upon thousands of pounds in care that's needed. I just spent 2 weeks in the autonomic unit in the neurology hospital in London because my autonomic system is now failing. If we don't invest in this funding and we don't invest in clinical trials, we don't better this testing, and we don't push awareness on the disease itself for prevention, then it's counterproductive. The amount of money that they are paying out for us to remain sick is better put towards research and clinical trials to help treat us.
Emma, thank you and good luck. And thanks for getting in touch this morning. Emma Dolan, who is describing the effect that Lyme disease has had on her, and echoing what John Caudwell was saying there, that he's prepared to put his own money forward if the NHS does the same to try and research and find out more about Lyme disease, have some tests, work out why it affects the people it affects. Thank you for all of your thoughts on that this morning. There's been so many of them as well on text, on social media as well, and your calls. Really appreciate that. And thank you as always for getting in touch. We always want to know your experiences and your thoughts on anything we talk about on the programme.